Why did the voice on the radio sound so calm when everyone else was dying? Three burning Humvees choked the mountain pass. The air was thick with smoke, diesel, and the metallic tang of blood. The ridgeline above erupted again, a wall of fire and dirt tearing through the rock. The survivors hugged the ground behind twisted armor, faces streaked with sweat and dust. They weren't fighting anymore. They were surviving seconds at a time. Staff Sergeant Noah Whittaker pressed his radio so hard against his helmet, it left an imprint. Any station, this is Havoc 2-3, taking heavy fire, multiple casualties. We're pinned, can't move forward or back. Requesting immediate close air support now. Static, just static, then a voice. Havoc 2-3, this is Reaper 6-1. Female, steady, calm enough to sound unreal in the chaos. I've got eyes on you. Stay low and hold tight. A pause. This'll be over in 8 minutes. 8 minutes? To the men trapped in that kill zone, it might as well have been forever. Noah didn't know who Reaper 6-1 was, didn't know the name of the pilot or where she came from. All he knew was that something in her voice, that deliberate calm, felt like the opposite of panic, and for a few seconds it kept him breathing. Above the chaos, slicing through the gray Ardani sky, an Apache Guardian helicopter broke the horizon like a hawk returning to claim its prey. Inside the cockpit, Captain Kira Tennant, 32 years old, veteran of 7 years and too many combat sorties, guided the bird like it was part of her nervous system. 15 firing positions along the ridge, said her co-pilot, Chief Warrant Officer Dean Keller. Machine guns, RPG teams boxed them in perfectly. Not for long, Kira murmured, drawl fatting as focus took over. Her gloved hands moved over the controls in a rhythm she no longer thought about. The Apache's sensors mirrored every twitch of her eyes, every breath painting enemy signatures across her display. The first ridge came into view. Below, black dots flickered in infrared hostile positions, firing down on the trapped convoy. Engaging, she said softly. The 30-millimeter chain gun under the nose thundered alive, its rhythm like a mechanical heartbeat. 625 rounds a minute. Each shell hit with the weight of judgment. The first burst erased a nest of machine gunners before their shells even reached her soldiers. 3 seconds, Dean muttered. One position gone. Kira was already on the next. Her mind didn't process the chaos as separate events. It was geometry, range, angles, wind, fire lines, all forming a single picture she understood instinctively. RPG team 2 o'clock, Dean called. I see 'em. She squeezed the trigger again. The reticle tracked precisely as the helicopter rolled to the right, compensating for recoil and wind shear. The rock they hid behind exploded into dust and blood. Below, Noah Whittaker saw the mountain erupt in flame. He couldn't see the Apache yet, it hid behind the ridges, but the results were divine and terrifying. Gunfire stopped. The ground shook. The enemy who'd been gods a minute ago were now ghosts. Third position down, Dean confirmed. Kira banked hard left, the Apache rolling with her as if sharing one heartbeat. 7 years of flying, this machine had burned the fear out of her muscles. She didn't think about risk anymore. She thought about precision. Switching to rockets, she said. 6 Hydra 70s tore into the sky, arcing in elegant trails that found their marks on the ridgeline. Each explosion folded dirt and metal together, turning bunkers into clouds. Positions 4 through 6 neutralized. Dean's voice was steadier now. They're moving, west approach. I see them. Heat signatures flared across her display, fighters trying to flank the trapped convoy. Kira dove lower, trading altitude for angle, threading the Apache between mountain walls as if flying through a canyon made of knives. Her voice didn't waver, short burst. The chain gun spat again, short, surgical, final. Every second mattered. Every round had meaning. In the cockpit, the world was all sound and vibration. The engine's deep hum, the rhythmic thunk of spent casings tumbling away, the echo of her own breath inside the helmet. On the ground, the survivors began to fight again. Hope, once dead, flickered back into them. They fired at shapes they could barely see, adding their small defiance to the chaos while somewhere above, a woman in a helicopter rewrote their fate. Reaper 6-1, this is Havoc 2-3, Noah shouted into the radio. His voice trembled with a mix of disbelief and awe. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We can finally breathe. Copy that, Havoc, Kira replied, her voice calm as still water. Stay under cover, we're not done yet. 9 targets down in 4 minutes. Dean's tone tightened. New contact, technical truck, South Ridge, heavy MG, moving fast. Kira's gaze flicked left. There it was, a pickup tearing across the dirt, gunner firing wildly. Taking the shot. One Hellfire missile dropped from the wing, its motor igniting with a scream that split the sky. 8 seconds later, the ridge erupted. The truck ceased to exist. Position 10 down, Dean said. 5 left, they're retreating. Negative, Kira snapped. They'll regroup, we finish it now. The Apache dove again, rotors screaming as it cut through the smoke. Her fire traced lines of pure intention, each burst of gunfire as precise as a heartbeat. She didn't need to see faces. She could read the battlefield like language. And yet, every time she fired, she felt it. That silent calculation between duty and consequence, between saving lives and ending them. 6 minutes since she crested the ridge, 2 targets left. 2 bunkers, Dean said. Concrete reinforced, old Soviet work. Chain gun won't cut it. Hellfires, Kira replied. 2 missiles, 2 bunkers. She steadied the Apache in a hover, a dangerous move, a perfect target, but the shot demanded stillness. The world went quiet in her headset. No chatter, no heartbeats, no thoughts. Rifle. The missile tore across the valley. Impact. The mountain convulsed. Concrete turned to dust. Rifle. Another launch. Another explosion that rolled through the canyon like thunder announcing judgment. Then silence. Dean scanned the sensors. All targets down, no hostile activity. Kira exhaled slowly, easing the Apache into a high orbit above the smoke. Below her, 15 points of destruction smoldered like dying stars. The mountain that had been a killing ground was now a graveyard, one she'd carved in 8 minutes flat. She keyed her mic. Havoc 2-3, this is Reaper 6-1, area secure, you're clear to extract wounded. Medevac inbound, ETA 12 minutes. The reply came shaky. Reaper, I don't know who you are, but you just saved 15 lives. Thank you doesn't cover it. Just doing my job, Sergeant, she said quietly. Get your people home. As she banked the Apache toward Camp Iron Ridge, the light of the setting sun hit the glass and painted her visor in gold. To anyone else, it might have looked heroic. To Kira, it was just another flight ending where it always did, somewhere between pride and emptiness. Dean broke the silence. 15 targets, 8 minutes, that's a record, you know. She didn't answer. Numbers felt wrong when people were involved. Back at base, her debrief was short and clinical. Colonel Henry Lawson, gray-haired and deliberate, flipped through the after-action report like a man reading a war story written in statistics. Outstanding work, Captain, he said. That convoy was minutes from being overrun. You saved a lot of lives. Just what I'm trained for, sir, she replied. You make it look easy. Dean cut in. She reads battlefield geometry like no one else, sees the whole picture instantly. Lawson smiled faintly. Which is exactly why you're being requested by name for a briefing tomorrow. High priority op. 700 hours. Being requested by name. That phrase always carried weight, the kind that came with risk or secrecy or both. After the meeting, Kira went straight to the hangar. Her Apache was being refueled, its metal skin reflecting the orange haze of floodlights. She walked around it slowly, fingers tracing the fuselage, feeling the subtle hum of the auxiliary power unit. Chief Warrant Officer Rosa Dean, the senior maintainer, looked up. "Your bird ran perfect, rearmed and fueled, ready for whatever's next." Kira nodded. "Thanks, Rosa. That hover shot on the bunker's no drift. That's your crew's doing." Rosa smiled, wiping grease from her hands. "We like pilots who bring their machines back in one piece. You've got a perfect record, Captain. Keep it that way." That night, Kira lay awake in her rack, staring at the ceiling fan's slow rotation. 15 targets, 8 minutes. It sounded clean on paper, but every explosion replayed in her head not as light, but as echoes of people she'd never know. She didn't lose sleep out of guilt. Not exactly. She knew what those fighters had been doing, setting ambushes, killing her people. But she also knew that every decision she made, every pull of the trigger, carried weight far heavier than the helicopter's armor. The trick was to be so good, so precise, that only those who truly deserved it paid the price. Outside, rotors beat faintly in the night, another bird taking off into the dark. For someone else's fight, someone else's 8 minutes. Kira closed her eyes. The calm voice that had kept Noah Whitaker alive that day was now silent. But inside her own head, another question rose and wouldn't leave her alone. How many times could a person walk through hell for others before part of them stayed behind? Why was she the only one called by name? The morning briefing room was cold, too clean, too quiet, a contrast to the smoky chaos she'd left behind just hours ago. The air smelled faintly of coffee and gun oil, and the hum of the projector filled the silence with tension. Captain Kira Tennant stood at attention beside her co-pilot, Dean Keller, boots dusted from the flight line. Colonel Lawson sat at the head of the table, posture crisp, but his eyes tired, the look of a man who'd seen too many young faces age too quickly. 2 others were waiting. A woman in plain clothes, posture sharp enough to betray her agency roots, and a special forces colonel with rows of ribbons that said more than introductions ever could. Lawson broke the quiet first. "Captain Tennant, Chief Keller, thank you for coming." He gestured toward the strangers. "This is Maya Tor's agency operations, and Colonel Grant Hayes' 5th Special Forces Group." Kira nodded once. "Sir." "Appreciate you being here," Tor said, her tone professional but not unfriendly. "We've got a situation that needs your expertise." A satellite image flickered to life on the screen, a compound carved into mountainous terrain, surrounded by cliffs and narrow passes. It looked like a fortress. "3 days ago," Tors began, "one of our assets in Corval Province went dark. We've confirmed he's being held inside this compound. The people who took him are led by a high-value target we've tracked for 18 months. The asset has information that cannot fall into enemy hands." Hayes took over, his voice low and certain. "Standard extraction won't work. Too many guns, too many walls. Ground assault would mean heavy casualties. We need something fast, violent, and overwhelming." Kira studied the feed. Her mind was already breaking it apart, elevation lines, angles, fire zones. "You want close air support for a raid," she said flatly. "We want you," Hayes corrected. "Your record speaks for itself. You don't just provide cover, you dismantle defenses before anyone knows what hit them. This mission needs that." The slide shifted. Zoomed-in schematics revealed guard posts, bunkers, and a circular mount that caught Dean's eye. "They've got a ZU-23, he muttered. "Twin-barrel anti-aircraft gun. That's serious hardware." "Exactly," Hayes said. "Your first task will be to eliminate it. No air insertion until it's gone." Tors added, "Our assault team will fast rope in from Blackhawks once you've cleared the LZ. Extraction under fire is expected. You'll maintain overwatch until every operator is wheels up." Kira's tone stayed calm. "How many operators?" 12, Hayes replied. 2 birds, in and out within 15 minutes. "Time on target." 200 hours, local. She leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing on the satellite feed. You're asking for surgical chaos, she said quietly. Everything has to hit perfectly or you lose everyone. Then it's a good thing you don't miss, Hayes said. For a moment, the room fell into silence. Then Lawson spoke. Captain Tennant, participation is voluntary. The risk profile is extreme. No one will question your decision. Kira smiled faintly. With respect, sir, if you wanted someone who'd decline, you wouldn't have called me. Dean glanced sideways at her. Same old Kira, half humor, half steel. After the briefing, the rest of the day was a blur of preparation. Maps, angles, ammo calculations, flight routes threading through narrow valleys and radar shadows. They rehearsed every variable until muscle memory took over. By 1900 hours, the hangar was alive with motion, mechanics shouting over turbines, loaders securing missiles beneath stubby wings, and the smell of fuel thick in the air. Chief Rosadine approached, clipboard in hand. Captain, you're at full load, 15 Hellfires, 76 Hydras, and a full feed on the chain gun. She'll be heavy. Kira ran her palm across the Apache's skin, feeling its weight even before lifting. Can't clear a fortress with polite language, she said softly. Rosa smirked. You've got that right. Dean Keller was already climbing into the front seat, running diagnostics. Everything green across the board, he called out. Comms clear, sensors aligned. Kira climbed in behind him, the cockpit sealing with a hiss that cut off the world outside. She checked her mirrors, mechanics saluting as they backed away. The engines roared to life. The bird vibrated beneath them, restless. As they lifted off, the floodlights fell away, and the world shrank to the black horizon and the dim green glow of the night vision display. For the next 90 minutes they flew low through the valleys, hugging the earth, weaving through terrain like ghosts. Kira didn't speak much. Dean didn't ask why. She was thinking about what Hayes had said: fast, violent, overwhelming. He meant it as tactics, but she'd lived enough missions to know what it really meant. Violence never stayed clean. It bled into memory. 15 minutes from target, Dean broke the silence. Assault team wheels up in 30. We're ahead of schedule. Good, Kira said. Let's paint the field. Dean toggled the sensors. The compound bloomed on their display, heat signatures flickering in red, guard patrols in lazy rotation, and the ZU-23 gun glinting like an open eye. ZU active scanning, Dean said. Then it dies first. Her voice shifted low, calm, surgical. The tone Dean recognized. It meant Kira was now inside the fight even before firing began. Setting standoff 8 kilometers, firing position locked. The first Hellfire missile dropped free from the wing, motor igniting with a scream that split the quiet night. 8 seconds later, the anti-aircraft gun ceased to exist. Rifle, she said again. Another Hellfire burned the sky. A bunker disappeared. Rifle, guard tower gone. Rifle, north wall. Each callout was a heartbeat. Each explosion another second shaved off the compound's ability to fight back. 6 Hellfires in 45 seconds. The valley lit up like sunrise. Dean whistled low. Compound waking up, fighters moving to engage. Let them, Kira said. We're moving in. She pushed the Apache forward, cresting the final ridge at 100 knots. The machine roared as the chain gun beneath them came alive. 30mm rounds hammered the compound, shredding vehicles and scattering bodies. Dean called targets, his voice tight but steady. Machine gun nest, northwest corner. Engaged. RPG team by the well. Got it. Technical truck, motor pool. On it. The cockpit rattled as rockets tore free from their pods, streaking toward the ground in arcs of fire. The compound erupted in chaos. On the tactical feed, red signatures vanished in clusters. Assault team inbound in 2, Dean reported. Copy, Kira said, eyes scanning every quadrant. LZ clear, minimal resistance left. The Blackhawks appeared on sensors, racing low and fast. Door gunners sprayed suppressive fire while Kira shifted position, sliding her Apache between the assault zone and the last enemy cluster. Her chain gun spat a solid wall of lead that kept every head down. 12 operators dropped in less than 20 seconds. Smooth, efficient. Overwatch established, she transmitted. You're clear to move. Copy, Reaper 6-1, proceeding to target. Kira circled high, keeping eyes on every corridor, every doorway, scanning for motion. Twice, she caught heat signatures flanking. Twice, she ended them before they could blink. Minutes blurred, time lost meaning. She was nothing but breath, sight, and instinct. Then a crackle on comms. Reaper 6-1 assault team, package secured, moving to extraction. Copy, Dean answered, sanitizing exit route. Kira lined up the last cluster of fighters, a desperate group near a storage building. She fired a short burst, then loosed 2 rockets. The explosions were bright and merciless. Extraction zone clear. The Blackhawks swooped in, dust and smoke spiraling around them. The team loaded their wounded asset, and within seconds they were airborne again. Assault force clear, Dean confirmed. Good, Kira said quietly. Let's close the book. She fired her final 2 Hellfires into the compound's ammo dump. The secondary blast was enormous, a rolling wave of light that flattened what was left. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dean said it softly, 40 confirmed kills, 0 friendlies, 15 minutes. Kira just stared ahead. Get the log recorded. The flight back was silent. Only the rhythmic hum of blades cutting air and the occasional static crackle of radio chatter far away. When they landed, it was almost dawn. Pale blue lights spilled across the tarmac as they shut the engines down. The Apache cooled slowly, its metal skin ticking like a heartbeat fatting away. Inside the debrief room, Maya Torres stood waiting, eyes sharp with restrained awe. That was the most precise strike I've ever seen, she said. You neutralized every major threat before our team even hit the ground. Good intel and timing help, Kira said simply. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. I've seen a lot of pilots, Captain, but what you pulled off tonight, that's not training, that's instinct. Kira gave a small nod, nothing more. Praise wasn't why she flew, it never had been. When she left the room, Dean followed a few paces behind. You know, he said quietly, they're going to study that run for years. Maybe, she replied, staring out at the morning light, but they won't study what it feels like afterward. Dean frowned. What do you mean? She didn't look at him. When you fly into fire that close and walk away clean, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like you borrowed time that someone else should have had. Her voice was calm, but there was a weight beneath it. Something Dean had heard before, after too many missions that ended perfectly on paper and painfully in memory. He didn't answer. He just stood with her as the sun rose over the hangar, casting long shadows across the flight line. Somewhere out there, another mission was already waiting. Another call, another 8 minutes. And for now, that was enough. Why do some names echo long after the shooting stops? 3 days after the compound raid, Staff Sergeant Noah Whitaker was recovering at Bram Airfield, arm in a sling, ribs cracked, lungs still bruised from the mountain blast. He survived the impossible, but he hadn't stopped hearing that voice. The one that had promised 8 minutes. And kept it. He tried to move on, but every night the scene replayed in his head, the ridge exploding in thunder, the sound of rotors cutting through death, and that calm, steady drawl over the radio. Stay low. Hold tight. This'll be over in 8 minutes. He'd never even seen her. Just smoke, light, and a sky that burned with salvation. Now, in the airfield mess, he sat with a coffee that had gone cold. 2 pilots nearby were talking in low voices, not realizing who was listening. "Yeah, that was Tennant's run," one said. "Blew the whole compound apart before the assault team even touched down. Keller flew with her." "Tennant," the other chuckled softly. "Reaper 61, the same one who saved Havoc 2-3 in the Ardani Pass." "Same woman." Noah froze, his breath caught. He turned slowly toward them. "Excuse me," he said. "Did you say Captain Tennant?" Both pilots looked up. "Yeah, Apache driver, Reaper 61, you know her." "I think she saved my life." The pilots exchanged a glance. One nodded. "Then you're one of the lucky ones." "Why do they call her the Reaper?" Noah asked quietly. The man smiled faintly. "Because when she shows up, death follows, but only for the enemy. She's never lost a soldier she's covering. Not once." Noah sat back, stunned. He'd heard call signs before. He fought beside legends who burned bright and disappeared just as fast. But this was different. She wasn't a myth, she was real. And now he needed to thank her properly. Not through static, not from the dirt, but face to face. 2 days later, he found her. The maintenance hangar at Camp Iron Ridge buzzed with the clatter of tools and the hum of machinery. Rows of Apache stood like sleeping giants, their metal skin catching the early light. Kira Tennant was there, as expected, flight suit half-zipped, sleeves rolled, her hands checking the feed system on her chain gun. She moved with quiet precision, like someone who trusted machines more than words. "Captain Tennant," Noah called. She turned, brow slightly furrowed, eyes sharp but not unkind. "That's me. Can I help you?" He straightened instinctively. "Staff Sergeant Noah Whitaker, Havoc 2-3. Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Mountain Pass." "Yes, ma'am." She nodded once, then looked back to the Apache. "You made it out." "Thanks to you," he said softly. 15 targets, 8 minutes. You told me to hold tight, and I did. Because your voice didn't sound like someone guessing. It sounded like someone who already knew the ending." Kira didn't reply at first. She finished her inspection, wiped her hands, and faced him fully. "Just doing my job, Sergeant." "With respect, ma'am, that's not just a job," Noah said. His voice wavered slightly, but he didn't stop. "I've called for air support before. It usually takes 20 minutes and a lot of chaos. You analyzed that whole kill zone in seconds and erased it without missing once. Every man in my convoy talks about that day. None of us even saw you, but we knew someone was up there watching over us." Kira's expression softened, the hardness in her eyes fading into something more human. "Your team held discipline under pressure. You didn't panic. That made the difference." He smiled faintly. "You make it sound like we did something special." "You stayed alive," she said. "That's special enough." For a moment the hangar went quiet, just the low hiss of fuel pumps and the creak of metal settling. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said finally. "How do you do it? How do you take out 15 targets that fast without hitting friendlies, without losing control?" Kira's gaze drifted to the Apache beside them, as if the machine itself held the answer. "Experience, trust in your hardware, and something harder to explain." "Try me." She sighed. "After a few years, you stop thinking about flight mechanics. The bird becomes part of you. You stop calculating. You start feeling the battlefield, where it's breathing, where it's dying. Every angle, every sound, it all connects. You just move with it." Noah listened, transfixed. "They call you the Reaper," he said quietly. "I've heard that one." Her lips curved into a small, reluctant smile. "Not sure I love the nickname." "Why not?" "Because it's not what I see from up there," she said. "People think an Apache pilot feels powerful. But from my seat, it's just lines of movement, dots that stop moving when I pull the trigger. It's clean on the screen, but it never really is." Her voice had changed, softer now, but edged with something heavier. "You ever wonder," Noah asked, "if the people you save make it worth the ones you have to kill?" Kira's eyes flicked to his. For a moment the air between them was taut with silence. Then she said, "Every day." He nodded slowly. "That's what makes you different." Kira tilted her head. "How so?" "Most people forget that question after the first mission. You haven't." A faint smile ghosted across her lips, not pride, but quiet acknowledgement. "Maybe forgetting just isn't in my wiring." Dean Keller appeared from the far end of the hangar, clipboard in hand, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're awful at taking gratitude, you know that." Kira didn't look at him. "I'm a pilot, not a celebrity." Dean shook his head. "You're something else. I've flown with good ones, great ones, but you're different. You see the field like it's alive." "Maybe I just don't like seeing people die," she said simply. Dean's smirk faded into quiet respect. Noah watched the exchange, realizing this wasn't the hardened soldier he'd imagined. She wasn't carved from steel. She was just disciplined pain wrapped in calm. "Well, ma'am," he said, "on behalf of everyone in Havoc 2-3, thank you. We're alive because of you." Kira extended her hand, rare, deliberate. "Then make it count, Sergeant." He shook it, firm and grateful. Then he turned to leave. When the door closed behind him, the hangar felt quieter. Dean glanced over. "You know, you could let people thank you once in a while." She brushed her hand along the Apache's armor, the metal cool beneath her fingers. "Gratitude doesn't change what's next." Dean leaned on the wing. "You think it's ever gonna stop? The flying, the calls, the missions that look impossible until you make them not." She looked out at the horizon where the sky was turning gold. "No," she said softly, "and I don't think I want it to." Dean nodded, understanding without words. Outside, the wind carried the distant hum of rotors. Another flight, another team heading out. Somewhere, other soldiers would call for help. Somewhere, another voice would promise survival. And when that call came, Kira Tennant would answer, because that's what she did. She didn't wait for glory. She didn't seek thanks. She showed up when the sky was falling and made it quiet again. Later that night, she sat alone in her quarters, helmet resting on the table, mission logs flickering on the screen in front of her. 15 targets in 8 minutes. Another compound destroyed. Another rescued asset. 0 friendlies lost. Textbook perfect. So why did it still feel heavy? She closed the laptop and stared at her reflection in the dark window. The woman who looked back wasn't a legend, just tired eyes and a heartbeat that hadn't slowed since the ridge. Her phone buzzed, a message from command. Transfer orders pending. She exhaled. Transfers usually meant one of two things, promotion or distance. Either way, it meant change. And change was something she'd learned to meet the same way she met fire, calmly, deliberately, with no promises. Outside, the last light bled from the sky, painting the flight line in shades of amber and gray. The kind of quiet that only exists between storms. Kira Tennant leaned back in her chair and let the silence settle. No medals, no speeches, just the stillness that follows those who have seen too much and ask for nothing in return. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did she say yes when she could have walked away? 2 weeks after the compound raid, Captain Kira Tennant stood on the runway at Camp Iron Ridge, staring at the horizon that had defined her life for 7 years. The orders had come through. Transfer to Fort Rucker, Alabama, instructor pilot duty. It was supposed to be an honor, the kind that meant you survived long enough to teach others how not to die. But to Kira, it felt like exile. The Ardani Highlands weren't just coordinates on a map. They were where she'd learned to live with the weight of her own decisions, and where she'd proven that a single voice in the sky could still mean salvation. Now, she was being told her time in the fire was over. "Rucker's lucky," Dean Keller said beside her. "You'll turn a generation of rookies into killers." She gave him a sideways glance. "That's not the word I'd use." Dean chuckled softly. "You know what I mean. You'll make them good." She didn't reply. The sound of her own name on an order sheet still didn't sit right. Not yet. They were standing beside her Apache, stripped clean after dearming. The bird looked almost peaceful without rockets or hellfires, like a predator at rest. Rosa Dean's crew was performing final maintenance checks before transport. "You ever think about quitting while you're ahead?" Dean asked. "Every time I land," Kira said. "Then I remember who still needs air cover." He smiled. "That's the problem, you don't know how to stop." "Would you?" He didn't answer. Later that evening, she was halfway through packing when the knock came. A young corporal at the door, out of breath. "Ma'am, command needs you in ops immediately. Priority 1 distress call. Closest Apache is grounded, yours is prepped for flight." Kira blinked once. "What's the situation?" "Medevac under fire, dust off 37, multiple wounded on site, can't land." Her bag was still open on the cot. She looked at it, the folded uniforms, the transfer papers, the photo of her and her flight team from 4 years ago, then closed it without a word. "Get Keller," she said. "We're wheels up in 5. The sky was already bruised with dusk when they lifted off. The Apache felt different tonight, heavier, quieter, as if it knew this wasn't supposed to be happening. Dean read from the incoming feed. "Dust-off 37 is taking small arms and RPG fire. They've got 3 criticals on the ground, pinned and bleeding out." "How far?" 20 kilometers. Kira pushed the throttle forward. "We'll make it in 3. Her hands settled on the controls like they belonged there. 3 minutes later, they crested a ridge and saw the chaos below, a medevac Blackhawk circling, unable to descend, while muzzle flashes blinked like fireflies around the landing zone. Soldiers on the ground were using their bodies as shields over the wounded. Kira didn't hesitate, engaging. The chain gun roared to life before the sentence ended. The Apache swept low, carving a wide arc through the valley. 30-millimeter rounds ripped through trees, vehicles, and the fighters hiding among them. Dust and fire erupted with each burst. "Left flank clear," Dean called. 3 positions still firing. "Not for long." She pivoted, nose down, chain gun stitching the ridge. Every target disappeared in rhythm, methodical, precise, absolute. 2 minutes. The valley went quiet. "Dust off 37, LZ clear," she transmitted. "Get your wounded out." "Copy, Reaper 61, moving in." The medevac dropped fast, rotors kicking up clouds of dirt as crewmen sprinted to load the wounded. Kira hovered overhead, watching through her sensors, heartbeat steady, eyes sharp. And then movement. "Thermals 11 o'clock, Dean warned. 4 signatures, RPG team." Kira's voice dropped into a whisper. "Not tonight." She swung the Apache sideways, fired a 3-second burst that tore through the hillside. The 4 heat signatures vanished instantly. "Targets down," Dean said. "Confirm extraction." "Dust off clear, 3 criticals aboard, they're climbing out." Kira watched until the Blackhawk was just a shadow disappearing into the dusk. She exhaled, "Let's go home." They flew back in silence, the kind that felt sacred after so much noise. When they touched down, mechanics ran forward, guiding the bird in with wands. Kira powered down slowly, listening as the rotors wound down from thunder to heartbeat to silence. Dean broke it first. 2 minutes, Kira. You cleared the field in 2 minutes. Not a record I want to chase." He smiled faintly. "You just saved 3 lives. I'd call that a decent send-off." She looked up at the night sky, empty now, calm again. "If this was my last flight," she said, "it was the right one." That night, word spread fast across the camp. The Reaper's last mission, 2 minutes, 3 lives saved. No one had been ordered to tell the story, soldiers just did. It spread like something sacred. By morning, every hangar, every ready room, every mess tent whispered her name like a promise. Reaper 61 cleared the LZ herself. under fire. Didn't wait for backup. Just went. Kira didn't like attention, but she couldn't stop it. She woke to find a note slid under her door, unsigned, but written in a soldier's hand. "We made it home because you don't hesitate. Thank you." She folded it once and tucked it into her flight log. No one would ever read it again, but she'd keep it. Some things didn't belong to the record books. 2 days later, her Apache was strapped down on a transport carrier. Rosa Dean oversaw the process, her usual smirk replaced with something gentler. "Hard to believe you're leaving," Rosa said. "You and this bird made quite the legend." Kira ran her hand along the fuselage one last time. "She earned it." Rosa nodded. "You both did." Dean Keller walked up with 2 coffees. "For the road," he said, "or the sky, I guess." She accepted one. "You staying?" He shrugged. "For now, someone gotta make sure the rookies don't crash into mountains." A small silence fell between them, comfortable, bittersweet. "You'll be a hell of an instructor," Dean said quietly. "But if you ever get the itch to fly into chaos again—" "I know who to call," she finished with a faint smile. They both laughed, a small sound in a big hangar. Then she looked back at the Apache, now secured for flight. "She's not just metal, Dean, she's memory." He understood. Machines remember, too, every vibration, every scar on their frame, every hand that flew them through fire. The flight home was long, the kind of long that gave too much time for thought. Clouds rolled beneath her transport like slow rivers. She sat near the window, helmet in her lap, watching the world pass in silence. She thought about all the missions, the convoys, the radio calls that began with panic and ended with relief. She thought about Noah Whittaker, about the look in his eyes when he said you already knew the ending. Maybe that was the truth. Maybe that was what set her apart. Not instinct, not training, just the refusal to believe that the people on the ground had to die today. The aircraft jolted slightly in turbulence. Her coffee rippled. She smiled faintly. "Just another bump," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if she meant the air or the years behind her. When they landed at Fort Rucker, she was greeted by orderly silence. American flags, concrete runways that smelled of jet fuel and rain, everything structured, calm, efficient. But she missed the chaos, the rawness of the highlands, the way purpose felt heavier when lives depended on it. She reported to the training wing, saluted, accepted her quarters. But that night when she walked past the line of training helicopters, she paused by an Apache, brand new, spotless. No dents, no scars. Too clean, too untouched by reality. She rested her palm on its nose. The metal was cool, lifeless. "You'll learn," she whispered. "They all do." And for a moment, she could almost hear rotors in the distance. The sound of her old bird, the hum of fire and wind, the ghosts of missions that had burned her name into legend. Back in Alabama, they started calling her instructor Tennant. She corrected them only once, just "Kira's fine." She spent the first few weeks teaching new pilots how to breathe under fire, how to track without thinking, how to see the field as a living thing. But every time a rookie hesitated, every time someone flinched under pressure, she heard echoes of herself. "Stay low, hold tight, this'll be over in 8 minutes." It wasn't just something she'd said, it had become a creed. Not about time, about control, about giving others something to believe in when everything else was chaos. Late one evening, as the sun dropped behind the Alabama tree line, she sat alone in the cockpit of a training Apache. No weapons, no war, just the quiet hum of systems running idle. She placed her hands on the controls and closed her eyes. For a second she was back there, the mountains, the smoke, the voice in her headset. Then quietly she smiled. "Still flying," she whispered to no one, "still here." Sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought with missiles or chain guns. They were fought in silence, between the person you used to be and the one you're becoming. And maybe that was the point. The Reaper wasn't a name she chose. It was one the world gave her. But in the stillness of that empty cockpit, she realized something simple. She hadn't been the Reaper after all. She'd been the one who made sure death came late. Why did peace feel heavier than war? Fort Rucker was supposed to be quiet, structured, predictable. The sound of rotors here wasn't urgent, just routine. Students practiced touch-and-go landings in perfect weather, their voices crisp over clean radios. No one shouted. No one bled. Captain Kira Tennant walked the tarmac each morning before sunrise, clipboard in hand, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. She wasn't used to calm, not like this. Calm made her restless. "Morning, Captain," one of her students said, jogging up beside her, Lieutenant Parker, 26, nervous but sharp. "Morning," Kira replied without slowing. "You pre-flight the bird?" "Yes, ma'am, twice." "Good, check it again." He blinked. I already did, ma'am." Kira stopped. "Do it again, Lieutenant. You'll be surprised what you missed." Parker nodded, flustered but obedient. Kira watched him go, then turned toward the flight line. A row of Apache stood gleaming in the Alabama sun, paint so new it still smelled of factory metal. Too perfect, she thought. Machines weren't meant to stay clean. They needed scars. Dean Keller had called her 2 days ago, still stationed in the Ardani Highlands. Same calm drawl, same teasing tone. "You'd hate it here," she'd told him. "They call me ma'am." He'd laughed, "And they listen." "Not yet." It was good to hear his voice, the familiar sarcasm of someone who'd seen the same darkness and come out mostly intact. But when the call ended, she'd felt it again. The silence afterward, the kind that hums inside your chest. The kind that asks, "What now?" By her 3rd week, the cadets had nicknamed her Ghost Eyes. Because she didn't just see mistakes, she saw the reasons behind them. A missed timing, a shaky hand, a flicker of doubt. She'd stop a simulation mid-flight, point to the display, and ask one question. "Where were you looking when you hesitated?" The room would go quiet every time. She wasn't cruel. She just wanted them to understand what the manuals couldn't teach, that hesitation kills faster than bullets. One evening, she stood in the control tower, watching a formation exercise. 3 Apache hovered over the field, students practicing close maneuvering. The sun had dipped low, painting the air orange and gold. A voice crackled in her headset. "Instructor Tennant, Flight 3 requesting feedback." Kira smiled faintly. "Feedback, you're flying like you're afraid to break something." A nervous laugh from the student. "Copy that, ma'am." She lowered the binoculars and turned to the tower operator beside her. "These kids are good," she said. "They're lucky," the operator replied. "Not everyone gets to learn from the Reaper." Kira's expression flickered, half amusement, half discomfort. "Don't call me that here." The man shrugged. "Hard not to. Everyone knows the stories. 15 targets in 8 minutes. You're practically myth." She didn't answer. Myths were easy to tell. Living them was harder. That night she sat in her quarters, boots off, coffee cooling beside a stack of student evaluations. She was halfway through grading when her phone buzzed. "Unknown number, secure line." She frowned, answered, "Tennant." "Captain," a voice said, deep, familiar, "Colonel Lawson." Her pulse tightened slightly. She hadn't heard that voice since Iron Ridge. "Sir, didn't expect this call. I wouldn't be making it if I didn't have to." There was a pause, the kind that carries weight. "Talk to me," she said. "Dean Keller's team went dark 12 hours ago. Routine recon along the Ardani corridor turned bad. We've confirmed enemy contact. 1 bird down. We've got no confirmation on survivors." Kira's heart stilled. Dean was flying. "Yes." She swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the dark window in front of her. "What's being done?" "Search teams are mobilizing, but the terrain's rough and the area's hot. Intel's sketchy. We're short on close air support assets since rotation started. You're still current. You still have flight status." He didn't say it directly, but she heard it in his tone, the request. "You want me back?" Lawson's voice softened. "No one flies that valley better than you." Kira closed her eyes. "When?" "Briefing in 2 hours, transport waiting." She arrived before anyone else. The operations tent at the temporary base outside Ardani was dimly lit, map projections covering the walls. The air smelled like fuel and adrenaline, familiar, almost comforting. Lawson was there, older, wearier. Maya Torres too, in plain clothes, hair tied back, the same sharp eyes that didn't waste words. "Good to see you, Captain," Lawson said. "I wish it was under better circumstances." "What do we have?" Kira asked. Torres gestured to the display. "Dean Keller and his co-pilot went down here, canyon pass near the northern ridge. Reports indicate heavy enemy movement in the area. We've had drones overhead, but visibility's limited." "Hostiles?" "Confirmed. Estimated 25 to 30 fighters. Likely the same cell responsible for last month's ambush on a NATO convoy. They're using the wreck as bait." Kira studied the terrain lines. "Meaning they expect us to come looking." "Exactly," Torres said. "They want another target. We need to be smarter." Kira's jaw tightened. "Smarter doesn't bring them home." Torres didn't argue. She didn't have to. Lawson stepped closer. "You don't have to do this, Kira. We can wait for full deployment." "Dean Keller waited for me more times than I can count," she said quietly. "He's not waiting alone." Lawson nodded. He'd seen that look before, the one she wore right before she made impossible things happen. 2 hours later, under the cover of dawn, she lifted off again. The Apache felt alive beneath her hands, as if it had been waiting too. She flew low and fast, skimming the ridgelines, the horizon tinted pink by early light. Her sensors painted the terrain in shifting shades of heat. "Reaper 6-1 en route to grid 9-6, she radioed. "Copy that," came Tor's voice. "No friendlies in your AO. You're clear to engage if fired upon." "Understood." Her eyes swept the valley ahead. The coordinates were burned into her mind. Dean Keller had been more than a co-pilot. He'd been the voice that steadied her when chaos threatened to overwhelm, the one who'd understood her silence. She scanned the terrain. Nothing, no movement. Then a flicker, heat signature faint, 2, maybe 3, near the canyon floor. "Visual," she whispered. Her targeting display zoomed in wreckage. Half an Apache torn open, blackened by fire. And there, movement. A figure crawling from the shadow of the fuselage, dragging something or someone. "Dean," she breathed. Her hand hovered over the comms, wanting to call out, but she stopped herself. Radio silence. The last thing she needed was to give their position away. Instead, she rose slightly, circling wide, scanning for threats. They came fast, signatures flaring from both ridges. Dozens of them. Fighters moving into position, rifles up, RPGs ready. "Of course," she muttered, "they're setting the hook." She didn't wait. The chain gun erupted, sweeping the ridges in fire. She moved like instinct, no hesitation, no second-guessing. Every burst precise, every motion deliberate. The valley filled with dust and thunder. Dean was still moving, still alive. She could see him now, one arm bandaged, blood dark on his sleeve, dragging his co-pilot toward cover. "Stay with me," she whispered, though he couldn't hear her. Missiles whooshed past her canopy, wild, desperate shots from fighters who didn't realize what they were facing. She dodged, banked, returned fire. The explosions rolled down the cliffs like drumbeats. "Reaper 6-1, this is command," Lawson's voice broke through the static. "We see your feed. We've got visual on Keller's beacon. You're clear to extract. Repeat, extract." "Negative," Kira said. "I've got hostiles closing from the north slope. I'm not leaving until he's clear." You can't hold that valley alone. Watch me. Her voice was steady, but her pulse pounded hard enough to feel through the harness. She unleashed a full salvo of rockets, leveling the north ridge, then dropped altitude so low the rotors sliced the treetops. Dean looked up. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met through smoke and chaos, pilot to pilot, survivor to survivor. Kira's voice came through his headset, broken but clear. Stay down, you're not dying here. She circled again, chain gun thundering. The enemy broke. They always did. When the last shot faded, the valley was quiet, just wind and the low whine of the Apache's engines. Command, this is Reaper 6-1, area secure, sending extraction coordinates, 2 survivors. Lawson's voice cracked slightly. Copy that, recovery team inbound. Kira hovered until she saw the medevac descend, watched as the crew hauled Dean and his co-pilot aboard. Only then did she exhale. Her voice barely above a whisper, "Welcome back, Keller." He raised a weak hand toward the sky, a silent salute. Back at base, hours later, Kira sat alone in the hangar, flight suit streaked with smoke and sweat. Her helmet rested beside her, visor cracked from debris. Lawson found her there silent. "You saved him," he said. She shook her head slowly. "He would have done the same." He studied her for a moment. "You know, every time you fly, you turn chaos into order. You make it look easy." She gave a tired smile. "It's never easy. I just stop caring how hard it gets." When he left, she stayed, hand resting on the Apache's nose, eyes unfocused, lost somewhere between exhaustion and memory. Outside, the sun dipped behind the ridge, painting the hangar floor in long, fatting stripes of gold. She whispered to no one, 8 minutes, 2 survivors, worth it. And for the first time in years, she felt something almost like peace. How do you come down from war when the ground still feels like it's moving? Fort Rucker looked the same as when she'd left it, trim grass, perfect runways, the steady rhythm of training flights in blue sky. Nothing had changed except her. The quiet was louder now. The stillness had an echo. Captain Kira Tennant signed back in 3 days after the rescue. Officially, she was on operational recovery leave. Unofficially, she was restless. The mission had gone perfectly, 2 lives saved, 0 losses. Yet every time she closed her eyes, she saw the canyon, the flash of Dean Keller's hand lifting toward the sky. Victory wasn't supposed to ache like this. She walked the line of parked Apache at dawn, fingertips brushing their metal skins as if checking for a pulse. Each machine looked alive but sleeping, each one waiting for someone to wake it. Rosa Dean's maintenance crew had shipped her old bird home from Ardani a week after she left. It sat at the end of the hangar now, scarred, paint burned, one panel patched in dull gray. Kira stopped in front of it. The smell of hydraulic fluid and scorched wiring hit her like memory. "Still with me," she murmured. A young mechanic glanced up from a toolbox. "Ma'am." "Talking to the machine," she said. "Ignore me." He smiled nervously. "Yes, ma'am." Kira traced a finger along the patched metal. War left marks on everything that came home, machines, men, minds. The trick was pretending the marks were just maintenance. She tried to teach again. Her students noticed the change before she did. The woman who once demanded precision now spoke softer, paused longer between sentences. During flight simulations, she'd catch herself staring too long at the digital terrain, eyes distant. "Ma'am," one cadet asked during debrief, "you okay?" "I'm fine," she said, but she was. Fine meant she could still fly. It didn't mean she'd stopped hearing the echoes. At night, she'd sit in the instructor's lounge after everyone left, helmet on the table, lights dimmed. The whir of the ceiling fan mimicked rotor blades. Sometimes she'd imagine the radio crackling to life, Dean's voice cutting through, "Reaper 6-1, targets ahead." And for a heartbeat, she'd almost answer. Dean Keller was recovering in Germany now. They video called once, both looking like ghosts of themselves. His arm was in a sling, grin still crooked. "You know," he said, "when that first missile hit the ridge, I knew it was you." She smiled faintly. "You sound sure." "I'd know your chaos anywhere." They laughed quietly. Then silence filled the gap neither could close. "You saved my life," he said finally. She shook her head. "We save each other, that's how this works." "Still," he said, "don't think I didn't hear Lawson call you the Reaper again." "I keep telling them to stop." "Yeah, but legends don't take orders." The line crackled. They said goodbye like soldiers do, short, awkward, unfinished. When the call ended, she stared at her reflection on the dark screen. The faint outline of her own face looked older than she remembered. 2 months passed. The rhythm of teaching returned, mechanical but comforting. She learned to grade papers without thinking about blood, to sleep through thunder without mistaking it for artillery. One afternoon, while demonstrating a night vision exercise, a cadet asked, "Ma'am, how do you know when to fire?" Kira paused, hand resting on the control stick. "When there's no other choice," she said, "but you'll think there's always one more choice. That's the hard part." The cadet nodded, not really understanding. She didn't blame him. Some lessons only the dark could teach. After class, she stayed behind, staring at the empty simulator screens. Their glow painted her face green, same color as the cockpit displays she'd lived behind for years. She whispered to the empty room, "No other choice." It wasn't an excuse. It was the truth she'd built her life on. That night a storm rolled across Alabama. Rain hammered the hangar roofs like gunfire. Lightning lit the sky white and the wind howled through the trees. Kira couldn't sleep. She walked barefoot to the flight line, rain soaking her hair, thunder vibrating through the concrete. Her old Apache sat alone at the far end, chained and grounded. She climbed the ladder into the cockpit, water dripping off her sleeves, the seat cold beneath her. Power off, dead quiet. She closed her eyes and imagined flipping the switches, feeling the machine wake under her palms. The smell of ozone, the hum before takeoff, the world shrinking to instinct. Then she whispered into the darkness, "Why do I miss you?" The storm didn't answer. Maybe peace was just another kind of battlefield, one where no one tells you what you're fighting. Morning brought sunshine and the same endless order. Her commanding officer found her in the briefing room, hair still damp, uniform crisp. "Rough night?" he asked. "Just rain," she said. He handed her a folder. "Evaluation reports. You're up for major next quarter." She blinked. "Promotion." "You've earned it." She nodded slowly. The words felt hollow. Major Tenant. It sounded distant, like someone else's life. He hesitated at the door. "You ever think about writing a book, The Reaper's Story?" She smiled without humor. "You can't write about ghosts, sir. They don't stay still long enough." That weekend she drove out past the base, through fields that rolled into forest. She needed sky, open, empty. She stopped at a clearing where helicopters sometimes practiced auto-rotation drills. No one was there now. She sat on the hood of her truck, coffee in hand, watching clouds drift. For the first time in years there was no mission, no radio, no countdown, just wind. She thought about the people she'd saved and the ones she hadn't met, about how war never really ends, it just changes shape. A line from her training days surfaced, something an old instructor had said before her first combat flight. "Every pilot carries ghosts. The good ones learn to fly with them. The bad ones pretend they're not there." She took a slow sip of coffee. "Guess I'm still flying," she murmured. When she returned to base that evening, a young cadet was waiting by her door. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you." Kira frowned. "At this hour?" The cadet stepped aside. A familiar figure stood in the hallway, Noah Whitaker. Clean uniform, slight limp, a folded paper in his hand. "Sergeant," she said, surprised, "what brings you here?" He handed her the paper. "Orders. They stationed me stateside for rehab. Figured I'd drop by before heading home. She opened the door, motioned him inside. You're looking better. Doctors say I'll keep the limp, he said with a half smile. Could have been worse. He looked around her quarters, bare walls, a single photo of her unit, the faint smell of coffee and machine oil. So this is what a Legends room looks like. She shook her head. Legends have fans, I have flight logs. He chuckled softly, then his tone shifted. I heard about Keller, about what you did. She said nothing. You saved him the way you saved us, Noah continued. People keep calling you the Reaper, but that's not right. You don't take lives, you give them back. Kira stared at the floor. Sometimes it feels the same. No, ma'am, it is. He hesitated, then added quietly, the day you saved my convoy, I thought I'd die hatting everything. But when your voice came through that radio, I realized someone out there was willing to risk everything for strangers. That changed me. She met his eyes. There was no bravado in them, just gratitude heavy enough to carry years. Thank you, he said, for proving we're worth saving. Kira swallowed hard. You always were. When he left, the room felt smaller but warmer. She sat down, the echo of his words lingering like a pulse. Later, she wrote a note on a scrap of paper and slipped it into her flight manual. Just 4 words. Worth it every time. Then she closed the book and turned off the light. Outside, the air was still again. No rotors, no thunder, just the quiet rhythm of a world still turning. She lay back and let the silence hold her. Because sometimes healing doesn't roar. It whispers. And sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is stop fighting. Why do they always come back for the ones who already gave enough? The call came just after midnight. Kira had been half asleep, a book open on her chest, the rain tapping against the window like hesitant fingers. The ringtone was the secure line, the one that never rang unless something was wrong. She answered before the second buzz. Tenant. Captain, said a familiar voice. Colonel Lawson again. I'm sorry for the hour. Her stomach tightened. Talk to me. We've got a situation overseas. Ardani Highlands, same corridor you used to cover. Of course, always the same mountains. The ghosts never change their address. What happened? A humanitarian convoy was ambushed. UN personnel, medical team, civilian drivers. We've got wounded pinned down and one Apache crew standing by for support. Young pilot, fresh from your program. Lieutenant Parker. Kira's breath caught. Parker, my Parker. Your student, yes. He's good. Learned from the best. But he's outnumbered and the weather's collapsing fast. Command wants an advisor to walk him through remote engagement. You're the only one cleared for that terrain grid. She sat up, swinging her feet to the floor. Put me in the loop. Lawson hesitated. You sure? You don't owe the sky anything anymore. She pulled on her flight jacket. The sky disagrees. The operations center at Fort Rucker buzzed with controlled panic, screens glowing, radios hissing, storm reports scrolling across the walls. Kira stepped inside, headset already on, eyes locked on the feed. A grainy thermal view of a valley she knew too well. Reaper control online, she said. Patch me through to Parker. Static, then a young voice trembling at the edges. Ma'am, Lieutenant Parker, we're taking small arms fire from the North Ridge. I've got rockets loaded but no visual, terrain masking everything. She could almost see him, hands slick with sweat, jaw tight, heart racing. She remembered that feeling, the edge where instinct fought fear. Breathe, Lieutenant, she said. You're not alone. What's your altitude? 4,500 meters. Drop to 350, hug the ridge, let the sensors do the seeing. Copy. The command room fell silent except for her voice. Every controller, every officer, watching one woman talk another pilot through hell. Check your thermal overlay, she continued. You'll see the heat bloom, northwest corner near that broken wall. That's your RPG team. Visual confirmed. Hydra's 2-second ripple fire. Through the feed, the night lit up, streaks of fire cutting through rain. The explosions hit clean, scattering the ambush. Cheers broke in the control room, quickly silenced by Kira's raised hand. "Not done," she said. "South slope moving trucks, chain gun short bursts, don't chase them, lead them." "Copy." The gun barked on the screen, targets vanished. Kira's voice softened. "Good work, Parker, how's your heart rate?" He gave a shaky laugh. "Hi, ma'am." "Means you're alive, keep it steady." For the next 10 minutes she guided him through the storm, reading wind patterns, predicting enemy flanks, adjusting firing angles. Every instruction she gave was the same calm rhythm that had once saved her own crew. She could hear herself in him, the hesitation, the focus, the belief growing second by second. Then a sudden flash on the monitor, smoke, a hit. "Ma'am, engine 2 warning light, taking fire left stabilizer." Her voice stayed level. "You're still flying. Cut power on 2, compensate with collective. You practice this." "I copy, losing altitude." "Level her out, feel the balance. Don't fight it, guide it." Seconds stretched. The feed jittered with interference, then steadied again. The Apache was low but stable. "Got her," Parker breathed. "Jesus got her." "Language," Kira said automatically, and half the room smiled through the tension. He laughed once, disbelief and relief tangled together. "Sorry, ma'am." "Apology accepted. Now get your people home." He finished the engagement, cleared the valley, and escorted the convoy to safety. When the final transmission came, all friendlies secure, the entire control room exhaled at once. Kira removed her headset slowly. Her hands were steady, but her throat felt tight. Lawson approached. "You saved them again." She shook her head. "He did. I just reminded him what he already knew." "Still," Lawson said quietly, "the Reaper's voice hasn't lost its aim." She looked at him weary. "Stop calling it that, sir." He hesitated. "What would you rather they call you?" She thought about it for a long moment. "Human." Later, when the room emptied, she sat alone before the dark screens. The storm outside had quieted, rain sliding down the windows like tears she'd refused for years. She thought about Parker, how young he'd sounded, how close he'd come, how her words had steadied him the way someone's once steadied her. Maybe this was what survival looked like, passing calm forward, one voice at a time. The next morning she visited the training field. Dawn mist hung low over the grass. A single helicopter sat on the pad, rotors still. She walked around it, hand brushing the cool metal. Parker arrived halfway through her inspection, limping slightly from exhaustion, eyes wide with equal parts awe and fear. "Ma'am." "Lieutenant," she said, "you slept." "Not really." "Good, keeps the adrenaline honest." He laughed nervously. "They said you were on the line last night. If you hadn't." "You did fine," she interrupted. "Better than fine, you listened." He nodded, then frowned. "Ma'am, how do you stay that calm? Even hearing it through the comms, it's like you already knew how it would end." Kira looked at the horizon, the pale sun climbing. "I don't know the ending," she said. "I just refuse to believe it can't be written better." He smiled at that, not sure he understood, but knowing he'd remember it forever. "Get some rest, Lieutenant," she added. "Tomorrow you'll teach the next one." "Me." "Who else? You've earned your scars." After he left, she sat on the edge of the pad, boots dangling above the tarmac. The world smelled of wet grass and fuel, the scent that always meant beginnings. For the first time, she didn't feel pulled between the sky and the ground. She felt both. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dean Keller in recovery. "Heard you talked another kid through hell. Told you legends don't retire." She smiled. "Maybe legends just learn to whisper," she typed back. Weeks passed. The official report from Ardani came through. All civilians rescued, 0 losses. The commanding general's memo commended Lieutenant Parker for exceptional composure under fire. At the bottom, a single line added later in pen, Advisor, CPTK Tenant. No ceremony, no medal, just ink. She preferred it that way. That night, she walked the airfield one last time before lights out. The stars were clear, the kind of quiet sky that made even the hardest heart believe in something beyond duty. She whispered up to the dark, "We did it, Dean. They're going to be fine." And for once, she believed it. Back in her quarters, she packed slowly, no rush this time. She slipped her old helmet into its case, the visor still scratched, still smelling faintly of cordite and sweat. On the inside, she'd taped the scrap of paper she'd written months ago, worth it every time. She paused, then added another line beneath it with a pen. "Teach them calm." Before turning out the light, she stood by the window, looking toward the far horizon where the training field met the trees. A single aircraft was lifting off for night practice, rotors glittering under the floodlights. The pilot's voice crackled faintly through the open radio on her desk. "Tower, this is Phoenix 2, lifting for pattern work." She smiled at the call sign, "Phoenix Reborn." Maybe that was what this all meant, not endings, transformations. She watched until the helicopter was only a faint red blink in the distance, then whispered the same words she'd once given to soldiers under fire. "Stay low, hold tight. It'll be over in 8 minutes." Only now she knew, the phrase wasn't about combat. It was about fear, about life, about surviving the hardest moments until the calm returned. How do you say goodbye to something that saved you and broke you at the same time? The hangar was empty except for her and the sound of rain. Real rain this time, not gunfire, not rotor wash, just water falling on metal, soft and steady. Kira Tennant stood in front of her Apache, the same one that had carried her through years of fire and silence. The one she'd named Iron Soul, but never told anyone. She signed her retirement papers that morning. 22 years of service, 1,462 logged missions, too many names she still remembered. And now it was done. A soft voice behind her, "Captain Tennant." She turned. Lieutenant Parker stood in the doorway, his uniform neat, his posture uncertain. "They told me you were leaving," he said. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." She smiled faintly. "Don't thank me, just stay alive." "I'll try, ma'am." "No," she said gently. "Don't try, decide." He nodded, the weight of the words sinking in. Then he hesitated. "They say you never missed a target, that true?" She looked back at the Apache. "No," she said softly. "I just learned which ones not to aim at." Parker didn't understand, not yet. Maybe one day he would. When he left, she ran her hand along the curve of the fuselage, the cold surface slick with rain. Every dent, every scratch, every burned edge had a story. She could name them all. The desert winds of Ardani, the rescue in the canyon, the convoy that almost didn't make it. Each one carved into her like coordinates on skin. "You and me," she whispered to the machine. "We never stopped." That night the officers threw her a farewell gathering, half celebration, half disbelief. Dean Keller joined by video call from his hospital room in Germany, wearing a grin and holding a contraband beer. "I still say they should ground that bird and build a statue of it," he said. "Don't you dare," Kira replied. "Statues don't fly." Lawson raised a toast. "To Captain Kira Tennant, the Reaper who refused to let death have the final word." The room cheered, but she stayed quiet, her glass untouched. Titles never sat well with her. Reaper, hero, legend, they all missed the point. When the noise faded, she said simply, "To the ones who didn't come home, and to the ones who did because somebody didn't stop flying." The room fell silent. Then glasses lifted again, slower this time, honest this time. Later, walking back to her quarters under the drizzle, she passed the memorial wall, polished stone etched with names that stretched longer than breath. She ran her fingers across them, one by one. So many she'd flown for, so many she still flew with in memory. At the bottom of the last panel was a name she knew too well, Staff SGT, Rachel Wynne. Her first door gunner, the first friend she lost. Kira knelt, thumb tracing the carved letters. "Still flying, Ratch," she whispered, "still trying to do it right." A breeze stirred. Somewhere in the distance, a training helicopter lifted off, a dull hum rising through the rain. She smiled. The sound didn't hurt anymore. The next morning she drove without destination, the road stretching open and empty. Her uniform hung folded on the seat beside her, medals tucked inside. She didn't need them on display. They were reminders, not decorations. By noon she reached the coast, an airfield that had once been a staging ground for humanitarian drops. The place was quiet now, reclaimed by gulls and wind. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, gray and infinite. She parked at the edge of the tarmac and stepped out. The air tasted of salt and memory. From her bag she pulled a small box. Inside lay her flight wings, silver, worn smooth by years of gloves and sweat. She looked at them for a long time, the symbol that had defined her, carried her, cost her. Then she knelt by the surf and pressed them into the sand. "Thank you," she said, "but I don't need to earn the sky anymore." The tide rolled in, washing over the metal, carrying it away grain by grain until it disappeared beneath the water. She stood there a long time, eyes on the horizon, until she could no longer tell where sea ended and sky began. Weeks turned into quiet days. She bought a small cabin near the edge of a forest, nothing fancy, just wood, wind, and enough silence to breathe. Some nights she'd sit outside with coffee, listening to the sound of rotors far off from the nearby base. She didn't flinch anymore. The sound didn't mean danger now. It meant someone else was flying, someone younger, someone ready. She spent mornings writing notes, not a memoir, not orders, just thoughts. About leadership, about fear, about why people fight even when they don't have to. Sometimes she'd drive to town and speak to veterans groups, never announcing who she was. Just a woman with a calm voice who told stories about courage that didn't make headlines. About medics who stayed, engineers who rebuilt, pilots who hesitated just long enough to save a child instead of a statistic. The younger soldiers would listen, eyes wide. And when one inevitably asked, "Were you ever in combat?" she'd smile and say, "Once or twice, but I was never alone." One evening, as the sun dropped behind the pines, she received a letter handwritten, folded in perfect military corners. The handwriting was careful, almost reverent. "Ma'am, they reassigned me to lead flight instruction next quarter. They said I remind them of you. I'm not sure if that's praise or a warning, but I'll take it. Thank you for teaching me how to fly through the noise. L.T. Parker." Kira read it twice, then folded it gently and slid it into the same pocket that once held a different note. The one that said, "We made it home because you don't hesitate." 2 notes, 2 generations, 1 purpose. She smiled. Maybe legacy wasn't about medals or names carved in stone. Maybe it was about the sound of another pilot's voice staying calm under fire. That night a storm rolled in over the forest, thunder rolling low, lightning tracing the horizon. She stood by the window, coffee steaming in her hands, watching the rain cascade down the glass. The sky flashed once, bright and wild. And for an instant she saw it, the silhouette of an Apache cutting through the storm, ghost-like, eternal. Her heartbeat synced to an old rhythm she hadn't forgotten. The same rhythm she'd carried through every mission, every loss, every impossible choice. She whispered into the storm, still flying. At dawn, the world was quiet again. She stepped outside, the grass glistening with dew, the air clean after the rain. Somewhere in the distance, a bird lifted off from a branch, wings catching sunlight like polished steel. She followed it with her eyes until it vanished into the sky. And in that moment, she understood something she'd never had words for before. All her life she'd chased the sky, thinking it was escape. But it was reflection. The sky had always been a mirror, showing her what kind of person she was when the world fell apart. Not invincible, not fearless, just steady. She thought of all the names, all the faces, the ones who never came home, the ones who did because she stayed calm, the ones who would fly now, carrying pieces of her voice inside their helmets. That was enough. She didn't need the call sign anymore. The Reaper could rest. Later, she wrote one final line in her notebook, simple, unadorned, the way truth should be written. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Then she closed the book, set it on the table, and stepped outside into the morning light. The sky was clear, the air weightless. And for the first time in her life, Kira Tennant didn't feel the pull to rise above it. She just stood there, breathing, the way the living do. No rank, no call sign, no ghosts left to chase. Just a woman who learned that even after the fire ends, there's still a way to fly. Quietly, beautifully, and free.